Good morning. Welcome to Bay Area Unitarian Universalist Church on this warm but beautiful sunny Father's Day. Happy Father's Day to all of the fathers here, and I'm going to take a moment and say Happy Father's Day to my own dad, who watches online most Sundays. Hi, Dad. I am Reverend Katie McQuage-Loukas, and my pronouns are she and hers. Whoever you are, whomever you love, however you have arrived with us today in body, in mind, in heart, or in spirit, whether you're joining us here in person or online, wherever you are in your spiritual journey, you are welcome here. If this is your first time with us this morning, you are welcome here. If this is your 500th time, you are welcome here. We are glad that you are here, and we are glad to be here together. We begin with words from Reverend Dr. Rebecca Savage. Welcome, beloveds, welcome. We come to spiritual community this morning with many hopes in our hearts: the hope for inspiration, the hope for comfort, the hope for renewal. In this time and space, may inspiration water our thirsty souls and bring us soulful satiation. In this time and space, may comfort bud and blossom in the gardens of our hearts and bring us sweet relief. In this time and space, may renewal course through us, as electric as a surge of energy, as serene as a nourishing meal, as contagious as joy. May it bring us vitality and rejuvenation. May our time together honor all the hopes we hold within. May our time together bless us with the gifts of inspiration, comfort, and renewal. Let us worship together.
Good morning. I'm Jane Ebron, today's worship associate, and my kibitz is going to light our chalice. And he's tall enough, he probably won't need stairs. We light this chalice to find inner peace, love for each other, and faith in ourselves. Also, to be welcoming to whomever we meet and kind to all living creatures. So gather around this light of hope as we share this time together. And now, please stand as you're willing and able to sing our opening hymn, number 112, Do You Hear? A covenant is not a definition of a relationship. It is the framework for our relating. This calls for a level of trust, courage, and sacrifice that needs to be nurtured, renewed, and affirmed on a regular basis. Abiding in covenant is an art form, a mutual creation. Please join me in saying our covenant. Love is the doctrine of his church. The quest is its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge and freedom, to serve humanity in fellowship. Thus do we covenant with one another.
Our responsive reading this morning is number 579 in the gray hymnal, number 579. It is The Limits of Tyrants by Frederick Douglass. Please join in with me on the italicized text. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are people who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. Find out what people will submit to, and you have found out the exact amount of injustice which will be imposed upon them. The limits of tyrants are prescribed by the endurance of those whom they oppress.
morning. I'm Christina Hicks. My pronouns are she, her. I'm stepping in today for Gloria, and our story today is called Juneteenth for Maisie. And as a lot of you know, as a children's librarian, I have to hold the book out like this. This is Juneteenth for Maisie by Floyd Cooper. Maisie wants to play outside, but it is too late. It's getting dark, Maisie. It's time to stay inside. Maisie wants a cookie, but it is time for bed. Not now, little one. It's too close to bedtime. Maisie wants to stay up late, but she is too little. Bedtime is the rule, sweet girl. Why so grumpy, Sugar Bear? Asked Dad. I can't go where I want, have what I want, or do what I want, answers Maisie. Well, tomorrow you can have a celebration, says Dad. What are we celebrating? Asks Maisie. We will celebrate the day your great-great-great-grandpa Mose crossed into liberty. The day will be celebrated by us and many more families on a day we call Juneteenth. Dad lifts Maisie into his arms. I bet you're tired of hearing no all the time. Well, great-great-great-grandpa Mose heard no even more. Grandpa Mose worked in fields that stretched all the way to sunset. He and the other enslaved people would be bone tired, but they had to keep going. Their enslavers wouldn't let them quit, but as they worked, they thought about freedom. And before they finally went to sleep at night, they prayed about freedom and made plans for a change and a better future. Some slaves ran north to freedom, following a bright star in the sky. They sweat, they bled, and they cried till those cries were quieted by a single proclamation from a brave president. Grandpa Mose heard that proclamation read from the balcony of the hotel on that warm June day in Galveston, Texas. Grandpa Mose heard nothing but cheers, saw nothing but happiness, and felt nothing but pride shared by all those around him. The cheers became dancing, the dancing became celebrating. It went on and on into the night. Grandpa Mose and the others had found freedom. They continued to work, but this time they were paid for their hard work. So they worked, and they saved, and they never forgot the moment they heard, the moment that changed their lives forever. But things weren't perfect. Black people still struggled to stand shoulder to shoulder with white people. They still weren't treated as equals. It wasn't easy, but they never gave up. And every year on Juneteenth, they remembered. They marched for jobs. They lobbied for schools and the right to vote. They shouted for opportunity. And every year on Juneteenth, they celebrated and remembered. They learned and they grew. They forgave. They excelled and achieved. They became heroes. Now, sweet Maisie, it's your turn to celebrate, just like great-great-great-grandpa Mose. It's your turn, Maisie, to eat some barbecue and drink some strawberry pop. It's your turn to celebrate. And to remember.
Thank you very much for standing in so very ably for Gloria today. We gather each Sunday carrying the week that brought us here and perhaps the week ahead. We come with hopes and dreams, we come with worries and anxieties, we come with sorrows, and we bring all of these things with us to this place because here we know that we are not alone, There are others here who have sorrowed and rejoiced, and they will join us in our sorrow or our joy. I invite you to come forward as you are moved to light a candle. You may light one for yourself, for a loved one, for the world, for whatever dreams or worries you carry today, for whatever milestones or celebrations. Whatever you bring to this place today, know that we witness it, that we share in it with you, and that we will help you hold it for this time. And we light one final candle for everyone who isn't here in this room this morning, for people watching online, for our friends who are traveling, for our friends who live on in our memory. We hold all these things too, in our thoughts and in our prayers. Will you please join with me in prayer by first taking a deep breath and noticing where and when you are, to be in your body, in this place, with these people in this moment. Infinite mystery, beating heart at the center of all things, dwelling in our heartbeats, dancing in drum beats, gleaming in the flashing of fireflies, and pulsing in the stars. We gather this day with grateful hearts, anxious hearts, nurturing hearts, and hearts in need of nurture. May we find what our own hearts need in the hearts of our companions on our journeys, and may our hearts overflow with that which meets the needs of our companions in our turn. This morning, we honor one of the many ways to parent, the fathers in our lives, and we offer up gratitude for those who have nurtured and guided us, be they our fathers of blood or of spirit or heart. We also make space for the silent grief for those among us who may be unable to be fathers, for those among us who did not receive that kind of care and love. We hold that grief too. May the love in our hearts empower us to show others the joy and the love at the beating heart of this world. And on this, the Sunday before Juneteenth, may our loving hearts lead us to liberation for ourselves and for all. Amen, and may it be so. Our sung prayer today, you may remain seated. It is Simple Gifts, which is number 16.
Today's reading is The Deep Well of Black Lives by Kristen L. Harper. On August 25th, 1619, the ship, the White Lion, arrived at Port Comfort, now known as Fort Monroe National Monument in Hampton, Virginia. The ship contained enslaved Africans. This is the first recorded arrival of Africans in America. This year, this anniversary was commemorated at Fort Monroe as a day of healing and reconciliation. The community was asked to ring bells at 3 o'clock for 4 minutes, signifying the 400 years that have passed since that historic moment. How do we mark that first day, that hour, that minute the White Lion docked at a point that would be of no comfort to the 20 enslaved Africans chained in her bowels, heralds of a coming storm of millions whose bodies would break through soil and rock to build an America that could never fully embrace its progenitors? How do we mark that day, that hour, that minute that foreshadowed the centuries of degradation, violence, of attempts to separate the soul and spirit from the deep well of Black lives? How do we mark that day, that hour, that minute, 400 years ago, when the first drop of African sweat commingled with the earth's warmth, planting the seeds of a new culture, a new way of life, a new heartbeat into the fabric of a new world? When the roots of freedom sparked deep underground and spread from generation to generation, blossoming into resistance and resilience. So today we will ring bells of sorrow, bells of grief, bells of atonement. We will ring out the ghost of those lost in the middle passages, lost to the whips and deprivation, lost to the lynches and the bullets, lost to the prisons and the chains of racism. Today, we will ring bells so that tomorrow we may ring in freedom, ring in liberation, ring in peace.
There has never been a time in our nation when Black people were not fighting for freedom. The slave revolts, the Underground Railroad, sabotage, solitary escape. Black people have always, always fought to be free. And sometimes the story of Juneteenth can be told in a way that makes it sound like folks were just waiting for Union soldiers to come save them, which is, of course, absurd. Instead, I suggest we hear this as a story of solidarity, as a story of the powers that be for once working for the oppressed instead of the oppressors. A story of someone showing up and people saying, finally, the struggle has been long and weary, but help is here. Hope that until this moment had been on the other side, finally. And we know that the Union soldiers, many of them were not necessarily thinking about Black liberation when they went to war. Some were, many were, but some were thinking about saving the Union. Some were thinking about honor or duty or glory. Some had to be there. Some didn't know why they were there at all. At some point during the conflict, there was a real shift in the national understanding and the national narrative. Arlington Cemetery is on the site of Robert E. Lee's plantation home. At a speech there, on the first Decoration Day of 1868, on the first National Memorial Day as we know it today, James Garfield, who at that time was not yet president, but who had been a general, gave a speech. He said, "We began the war for the Union alone, but we had not gone far into its darkness before a new element was added to the conflict, which filled the army and the nation with a cheerful but intense religious enthusiasm. In lessons that could not be misunderstood, the nation was taught that God had linked to our own the destiny of an enslaved race, that their liberty and our union were indeed one and inseparable. It was this that made the soul of John Brown the marching companion of our soldiers and made them sing as they went bound down to battle." And I summarize here because I don't think you want me to try to sing anything, but as Christ died to make men holy, let us die to make men free. Garfield continues, "With such inspiration, failure was impossible. The struggle consecrated, in some degree, every man who bore a worthy path. 7 years ago, this, by which he means Arlington Cemetery, was the home of one who lifted his sword against his country and who became the great imperator of the rebellion. The soil beneath our feet was watered by the tears of slaves, in whose hearts the sight of the Capitol awakened no pride and inspired no hope. The face of the goddess that crowns it was turned towards the sea and not toward them. But thanks be to God, this arena of rebellion and slavery is a scene of violence no longer." And to pick up my thread from Memorial Day, there are not good wars, but sometimes something good can come out of war, part of the world's ongoing transformation and change. It was midway at the half point of the war that President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, stating that every person in the rebellious states were now and forever free. You might notice that there are whole swaths of the nation not covered by that proclamation, states that did not secede but nevertheless had slaves. The proclamation was designed as a weapon of war to destroy the rebel states by enabling every little inch of conquest to dismantle their economies. It would not be until the Reconstruction Amendments that people were properly freed across the entire nation, and it was those amendments that would establish their rights as citizens. Nevertheless, the fact that the very existence of the proclamation was what enabled General Gordon Granger, when Texas was taken, to announce military orders to actually fully enforce it. And that order was posted all over Galveston on church doors and store doors. Black Texans knew that there was not only a piece of paper somewhere in Washington, D.C. saying they were free. They already knew. They'd already heard about that some time ago. But now they knew that there was a military present right here, right now, to actually enforce it. Now it was real. And so June 19th became Jubilee Day and Juneteenth. Black folks had to raise money for their own parks so that they could hold their own parades and picnics. And so they claimed public space, public places to be joyful and celebratory. They also used those celebrations for political education to grow as citizens, and so freedom meant joy and responsibility, the ongoing work of maintaining liberty and freedom. Reconstruction ultimately failed in the decades ahead. Troops were withdrawn. Rebel states were reincorporated back into the nation while retaining their systems of oppression and disenfranchisement. Jim Crow picked up where slavery left off. But for a moment, for a long moment, there was a brief shining time when elected representatives actually looked like their constituencies, when amazing legislation was being written. The Union made a choice to hand power back to the landowning classes, the formerly slave-owning classes, and there it was. And so Juneteenth celebrations did wane a bit for a time because Black people were again afraid to be in public, to be joyful in public, and to celebrate in public, knowing now that once again, the power of the state did not belong to them. And so the celebration waxed and waned over the century and a half between now and then. But during the Great Migration, it spread throughout the country as people went north and west looking for work and opportunity. Barack Obama said that Juneteenth has never been a celebration of victory or an acceptance of the way things are. It is a celebration of progress. It's an affirmation that despite the most painful parts of our history, change is possible, and there is still so much work to do. It's a federal holiday now, recently, and there's a chance that Juneteenth might be used to pretend that progress is accomplished, that we are done, that liberation is complete. There's also the risk that it will turn into a celebration of white benevolence, sanitized of the very real struggles behind it and underneath it. But there's also the opportunity that we can use it to reflect on how far we have come and have yet to go. Juneteenth is a reminder of liberty being enforced by martial law, because the space to be free had to be forcefully claimed by war and then by martial law after. Juneteenth reminds us that liberty is contingent, that it relies on constant work to maintain it and to expand it. And it reminds us that power, that tyranny, concedes nothing without a demand. What does it mean to be free, to be a liberated people? George Lakoff is a linguist and a philosopher, and he does a lot of work around particularly the way we use language in politics, the way that different political groups and constituencies use the same words, but mean very different things by them. And he has observed that there's two primary ways that we as Americans talk about freedom and liberty. There's the version of freedom that expands voting rights, creates better working conditions, promotes public education, limits the workday, provides public health. And this is positive liberty in the technical sense. It is creating the conditions that make it possible to have control over one's own life, to have real agency, and to become one's fullest self. This is the freedom to become. Politicians on the right speak constantly about liberty, and the way they speak of it is an individual form of freedom, Anything that impinges upon me ordering the world the way I wish it to be has damaged my individual liberty. And so in this view, we see so-called parents' rights movements removing books from public schools, editing curricula, so as to protect the family from scary ideas. Being exposed to those outside ideas is considered to be some sort of government interference in private life. Never mind that there are real people who actually live those ideas, that there are real people who are actually gay or trans or non-white or of a different class. This vision of freedom is a negative freedom, to be free from obstacles or free from constraints. And in this form of freedom, we don't necessarily hear things like freedom from fear or freedom from want. And I'm drawing that from Franklin Delano Roosevelt's Four Freedoms, where we easily recognize freedom of speech, freedom to worship, but we don't always hear freedom from want and freedom from fear in our discourse. Because freedom from want, freedom from fear, these require government interference, which may perhaps be felt to be unwarranted, through economic schemes to level the playing field, by compromising the individual right to bear arms. For others to be free from want or free from fear, some must sacrifice just a little bit. We get the sense of that individualistic notion of liberty from constraints when people talk about freedom of speech as only including some forms of speech, but not criticism of that speech or consequences for that speech. Those things feel like constraints or obstacles, and so the narrative is that liberty is at risk. And I think this version of freedom, that the religious right is using the freedom of the religious right to exist free of ever encountering opposition or criticism or pushback, the freedom to bother other people, the freedom to claim public space and block others out of it. It feels to me like some version of the colonial claim on property, the old argument that if other people aren't using the land correctly, that someone else should take it and use it well. The idea that if people aren't using freedom properly, the right will claim it and use it correctly. Those of us who found this faith along the way, who were not raised in it, sometimes talk about finding room to breathe, room to become, room to be free, free from dogma, free from hierarchy. And that is one of the things we do. We give people room to breathe and grow, and we offer liberty. But there is always the question of whether we're really offering liberation all of the time. It's easy for us to offer that negative form of liberty, to be free of obstructions and barriers. It's a little harder to consistently offer a positive view of liberty. But at our heart, we are a democratic faith. Our entire organizing structure is bottom up, people up, not top down. We affirm that all voices matter. We affirm that human beings were made for community and made for joy, and that we all deserve the conditions to grow into our best selves. Juneteenth reminds us to examine where we are, how far we've come, and where exactly we want to be, who we are now and who we wish we were. And we are reminded that this work is a sacred calling, not merely a political one. It is a religious commitment of Unitarian Universalism to expand democracy. We are called by our faith to resist increasing restrictions on voting rights, restrictions on participation in the political process. And we are called to participate to the fullest as individuals and as a community. We are also called to then use our political power to increase the ability of all to flourish, to use our freedom of speech and freedom of worship to work toward freedom from want and freedom from fear. We are called to build a world where there is more joy, more delight, more celebration, and more love. And we don't relinquish the negative version of freedom, the idea that we have the freedom to believe without constraints, but we recognize that all deserve that same liberty and that we are responsible for creating a world in which everyone can be free. This summons us to solidarity with those who may not have the numbers or the political power to carve out space for themselves in public life. We may perhaps be called to relinquish some of our own freedoms for the benefit of others, to step aside, to make space, to make room. There is friction here and discomfort, and I think it's this discomfort that pushes some to dismantle the progress of the last several decades, to undo the freedoms of others. But our faith tells us to seek the joy there instead, to seek the delight in celebration and solidarity, to lean into what it might mean to live in solidarity with all of the people around us, for each of us to offer up whatever freedoms we have for a communal liberty. We are called to grow and to stretch the circle of love ever wider, to tear down walls and borders until we have made room for everyone. That's where love lives, and joy too. A world that limits freedom is dangerous. A world with boundaries and walls and limits hems everyone in, ultimately, one way or another. And there is no perfection, and a vision of total liberation is probably a dream of a world that will not ever actually exist, but the dream can guide us as we build it here, inching a little bit closer. We've seen those visions before, and we are learning to honor those legacies and carry them with us. Let us hold within us the knowledge that love and justice free us all, that love and justice demolish borders and give us the daring to cross from the world that is to build something better and to strengthen the bonds that bind us all. Amen, and may it be so. We have a Share the Plate today, so once a month we take a Sunday and we share our offering with a group or an organization that expresses our values, that is carrying out some of that work of liberation in the world. And last week in my sermon I mentioned Pink Haven, and the Pink Haven Coalition grew out of First Parish Malden in Massachusetts, where a student minister and that congregation's minister and a bunch of lay leaders tried to figure out how to build a safe landing place for people in need. So people who need gender-affirming care need resources for temporary stays in other places, or perhaps even the resources for relocation. So Pink Haven is growing a network of mutual aid to try to reach as many people as they're able. And they're building a network of organizations and individuals in different states to support trans and non-binary people in this time of need. Half of what you give this morning will go to Pink Haven, and the sorrowful knowledge that some of the money they receive will be used to assist Texans, but also in the hopeful dream that our comrades will find what they need to flourish wherever they land. Please give as generously as you are able. Please join me in the blessing of the offering. It's in your order of service. This gift from the abundance of my life blesses me, our ministries, and the world. And I'm doing that because I do have one announcement that is not in the slides. I'm so sorry. I just noticed that it wasn't in the announcements and thought I'd better make sure it's super clear. So this coming week is our General Assembly, when people from all over the country gather for our big UUA, all of our voting and all of our things, but that also includes Sunday worship. They are sending us a recording so that we can watch the Sunday worship at our usual time. And I wanted to be really clear about that because I know they're live streaming it at a totally different time. Don't worry about that. We will be watching it in here. We'll just watch it up on these screens at our usual time. And I wanted to make sure everyone knew that so that nobody came an hour early or an hour late or was otherwise terribly confused. And if something technical goes wrong, and for any reason I don't actually have the recording, we'll hang out and drink coffee and it'll be great.
Did you know that every day in our community, 88,740 children are left wondering where their next meal will come from? 88,740 children. This summer, our Religious Education Service Project is on a mission to support Kids Meals Incorporated, the nation's only free and healthy meal delivery program for children in Houston. Through the end of July, we'll be accepting donations to be used in creating prepackaged lunch bags. The children and youth of BAUUC will be decorating bags and preparing them for delivery during the first week in August. Our goal is to provide 100 meals for preschool children. Let's come together as a community to fight childhood hunger and bring smiles to these little faces by donating non-perishable food items. You can use the QR code on the screen to purchase items from our Amazon wish list, or you can drop off donations directly in room 120, located in the Religious Education Wing. Remember, every meal counts in making a difference. And we're excited to announce that BAUUC will be marching in the Houston Pride Parade on Saturday, June 29th, alongside other Houston UU churches. Whether you're ready to stretch your stuff in the parade or lend a helping hand getting ready for the parade, we've got a spot for you. Stay tuned for more details in your inbox. For further information or to get involved, show your UU Pride, reach out to Jeff Boxell, and I can't tell you what his email address is because it was in blue and I only have a black and white printer. Sorry about that. If you need a BAUUC gold shirt to wear in the Pride Parade, just contact the church office or call 281-488-2001. We have plenty of shirts available in all sizes. Get yours today and show your BAUUC pride. And a quick reminder, and especially now that I am treasurer, the end of our fiscal year is quickly approaching. Any donations to fulfill your 2024 pledge should be turned in before June 30th. You can donate online by using the QR code on the screen. If you have any questions or need an additional copy of your contribution statement, contact the church office. Next Sunday, BAUUC is pleased to host the monthly gatherings of Clear Lake Small Group Meeting of PFLAG at 2 p.m. in the church sanctuary. These meetings are held on the fourth Sunday of each month. PFLAG is the pioneering organization dedicated to supporting educating, and advocating for LGBTQ+ individuals and their families. Join us in keeping families united in loving bonds, fostering understanding, and embracing their gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, and questioning family members. And after today's service, members and friends are invited to join us to mingle over coffee and enjoy light snacks in Cockrell Hall. If you would like to donate snacks or help with setting them out, please use the sign-up sheet available in Cockrell Hall. Let's come together and share some quality time as a community. And finally, here at BAUC, we understand the importance of staying connected with our community. That's why we offer a weekly newsletter every Tuesday with the latest news and events happening at our church. Don't miss out on the opportunity to engage in meaningful activities and connect with fellow members. Sign up for our email list today using the QR code on the screen or by going to BAUUC.org and join our community of spiritual growth, fellowship, and fun. And now, please stand as you're willing and able to sing our closing hymn, number 108, My Life Flows On in Endless Song.
My closing words are from the same author of our opening words, from Reverend Dr. Rebecca Savage. As we come to the end of service, may you depart from our time together, buoyed by the spirit of life, delighted by the warmth of our gathering, and renewed in soul and mind. As we extinguish the flame of our chalice, may its lingering spark be carried in your heart until we are together again. Go in peace, and blessed be.